Is it just revenge you're after, or do you have another plan in mind? Will you restore things, make it all right again, and crown a new empress? Or will you send them all howling into the void? Either way, I expect a good show.
Get away from her! Corvo! Help me! Get away! Corvo! Corvo, it's all coming apart.
Ward us all. Look at what he's done.
Yes, he's killed the Empress. What did you do with young Lady Emily, traitor?
Her own bodyguard. Ironic.
I'll see you beheaded for this, Corvo. Take him.
Dishonored is a tale of vengeance. Corvo is framed for the murder of the Empress and their daughter's kidnapping. Hiram Burroughs, the mastermind behind the coup, imprisons Corvo and schedules for his execution. Before that happens, he's broken up by the Loyalists, a group serving to reinstate Emily to the throne, led by Farley Havelock, Trevor Pendleton, and Teague Martin. A discharged admiral and aristocrat, the Loyalist key strategist. Together, they remove key targets keeping the Lord Regent in power, and ultimately dethrone him. Shockingly, the three men betray you and try to take the throne for themselves. The story is the weakest point of Dishonored. I don't outright hate it, but it was a simple story that lacked any real tension. I don't have a 5-head, but the plot twist is very predictable. The short game length restricts the story from having more beats and building anticipation. Despite that, there's a rich lore told through readings and audio logs found around Dunwall. The game relies on players to actively look for it. Playing without paying attention to the story is still enjoyable, but takes away some of the game's charm. The lore elaborates more on the nature of Dunwall and the life of our characters. They give context to character motives and personalities, telling stories of faceless characters impacted by the plague. This way, the universe is built to be more realistic and complex. There is enough lore to stay engaged if the player is willing to seek it. There is a great deal of visual storytelling done through environments. Missions have you traveling to different areas of Dunwall. Even while avoiding the story, you can get a sense of the situation. Individuals who couldn't escape the rat plague live in the Empire's shadow, residing in rundown apartments while hiding from the army. Soldiers bar off entry to wealthy or government sectors, leaving the victims to fend for themselves. Lastly, the characters. Corvo is a silent protagonist, giving me no insight to his mind state throughout his journey. There is little development between him and his loyalist allies. They are only present in between missions, and just serve as plot devices to push the plot ahead. I get that their duty is to serve Corvo, but it doesn't stop them from feeling one-dimensional. Most have an archetype, and don't expand outside that box. This was my opinion after ignoring the readings and audiographs on my initial playthrough, but going back to these pieces of story, add a layer of depth to these characters. The exception being Samuel and Emily. The player fosters a connection with them, constantly being present in your missions. Samuel serves as your boatman, transporting Corvo to and from missions. He highly respects Corvo, and his opinion of you changes based on your actions. Emily seeks Corvo for comfort, witnessing the death of her mother. There is a duty to do the right thing, after how fucked the situation is. The antagonists are painted similarly, relying on a persona for their character. Many are powerful officials supporting the regime for personal gain. Their main purpose is to serve as obstacles for Corvo before facing the Lord Regent. The lack of exploration of these characters ties back to their reliance on reading and short game length. The antagonist is only present in their mission, restricting how fleshed out the character can be built. Overall, they don't detract from the story and fit well to push the plot forward. The only character we see real duality in is Dowd, the late Empress's killer. I will discuss his arc in a future video, because the DLC, The Knife of Dunwall, gives me more context. Although I think the characters are shallow on their own, they mesh well into the universe. They talk, act, and look like they belong in this steampunk apocalypse. If there is one thing I could say about Dishonored, it's the atmosphere. The world is painted in an oil painting aesthetic. Structures take inspiration from 17th century London architecture. Walking the streets immediately takes you to an older era of history. Environments are heavily stylized to make Dunwall stand out as its own world. Buildings are fleshed out with stylized exteriors and interiors. Locations range from playground districts to brothels. Each mission creates a distinct mood through its visual elements. It's done through the use of color and lighting to set an emotional tone. A refresher on those who didn't take photography or film, light has many purposes, but is used primarily to create a visual mood. It can evoke feelings of suspense, repulsion, or horror. Color works alongside lighting for the same goal. Certain colors evoke certain emotions. Colder lighting is associated with feelings of sadness, while warmer lighting creates a comforting or cozy feeling. The contrast of color and lighting within Dunwall push the theme of a chaotic city. There is a visual dynamic between the common folk and wealthy of Dunwall. Infiltrating the home of an aristocrat is full of warm and bright colors. Lavish interiors with multiple light sources, in contrast to the stark and grey alleyways of those infected. Neighborhoods are left in ruin, inhabited by rats and the remains of their victims. The common man is left in the dark and abandoned by the Empire, while those in power take advantage. The second mission, High Overseer Campbell, sees Corvo infiltrating the office of the High Overseer. Campbell commands a militant religious faction and is allied with the Lord Regent. The district is shrouded in a cold light, and buildings are painted in mute colors. Shadows fill the alleys of street corners. The tone is very moody and unwelcoming, and only intensifies as you reach the High Overseer office, emphasizing the authority and harsh nature of the regime. The official inside, High Overseer Campbell, is unsympathetic and willing to betray those around him to stay in power. The universe also takes inspiration from steampunk and Lovecraft. Steampunk is a style of science fiction where steam-powered machinery is fused with Victorian visual styling. Designs are very mechanical, with intricate designs of moving cogs and gears. Dunwall, entering its industrial age, uses whale oil to power its technology. We see the steampunk influence on weapon designs, Corvo's mask, environments, and various enemies. There's also a splash of Lovecraftian thrown into the mix. If you're not familiar with Lovecraft, it's a genre of horror that focuses on the fear of the unknown, Cthulhu being the iconic face. Dishonored uses this idea as a foundation for the void, an alternate dimension that hungers for a representational godlike entity. Whatever that means. Residing within the void is the outsider, a supernatural being, neither good nor evil, worshipped by many, but outlawed by the Empire. He watches over Corvo in anticipation to see what path he will take with his new powers.
Hello, Corvo. Your life has taken a turn, has it not? The Empress is dead. Her precious daughter Emily is lost somewhere in the city, and you will play a pivotal role in the days to come. For this I have chosen you and drawn you into the void. I am the outsider, and this is my mark.
Dishonored soundtrack is made up of 17 tracks, composed by Daniel Licht, who also worked on Dishonored 2 and Dishonored Death of the Outsider. The tracks share a common theme of suspense and horror, portraying Dunwall in a shattered state, engulfed by corruption. Alongside the visual design, the music adds a weight of importance. Your actions carry influence on Dunwall's fate. The nostalgia for a once flourishing empire is now in decline. There is a great deal of attention put on sound design. Sounds are very mechanical, fitting the steampunk aesthetic. Combat feels impactful while fighting enemies. Abilities and weapons have unique sound cues. Each mission has a sense of identity. Environmental sounds characterized in the different locations. Overall, the sound design and music elevate the tone of Dishonored. Dishonored puts a huge emphasis on player freedom. Missions are designed with an open world approach. sending Corvo out to eliminate a target. Approaching with a stealthy or aggressive playstyle are both viable options. Different playstyles are encouraged with several paths open to the player. There's a sense of verticality. Players can take routes through ground levels or rooftops. Exploration is encouraged and adds a lot of replayability. There's a good sense of progression as the player finds more and more items to use. Corvo is equipped with a wide arsenal to take on the Empire. Weapons range from sleep darts to hand grenades. The primary weapons being a crossbow, sword, and pistol. The crossbow is precise and quietly takes out enemies from a distance. The pistol has a shotgun-like spray and decimates in close range. Lastly, the sword is used in head-to-head combat. In addition, he has 6 unlockable abilities: Blink, Dark Vision, Devouring Swarm, Wind Blast, Possession, and Bend Time. They add a level of complexity alongside the gadgets. Level designs encourage experimentation with how abilities interact. The mechanics feel very intuitive. Abilities and weapons can synergize in creative ways. Environments encourage it, with interactable objects placed around locations. The player can purchase upgrades for weapons or gadgets with coin. Abilities can be enhanced with bone runes. Both reward to the player for completing optional missions or discovering them throughout Dunwall. Bone charms are an item separate from bone runes that give small bonuses to Corvo, such as increased health, increased attack speed for swords, or faster choking speed. Potions are also present, recovering health or mana respectively. Chaos. The level of chaos in Dunwall is affected by the number of people killed throughout the course of Corvo's journey. Aggressively killing everyone in your path results in a high chaos. More enemies will spawn, and their behavior will be more erratic. Playing a non-lethal style results in low chaos and less enemies, both being viable playstyles, but result in different story endings. Dishonored plays in a way that is very tailored to the individual player. There is a focus of letting the player feel like the true terror of Dunwall. I'm very conflicted. I admire the visual setting and player freedom, but I'm not in love with the game. I get that a big portion of players' enjoyment will come from using abilities and murdering enemies, but that wasn't the case for me. Playing as a master assassin was dope, but lost its appeal after some time. The combination of gadgets and abilities allowed for a multitude of playstyles, but didn't keep my interest. I felt that it lowered difficulty and really widened the player difference between Corvo and his opposition. Despite me not having the best time, it's still a great game that holds up in 2020. I see why it's loved by many players. The idea of mechanics and physics creates for a sandbox-esque experience. The visuals and audio accentuate the chaotic state Dunwall is in during the events of the game. All these elements mold a strong foundation for the universe of Dishonored. Now for my scoring. Add it all up, and my Urge score comes out to 31 out of 40, which places it here next to relevant titles. Needed more cheese.